"Are you all right?" Zero asked from above. Stanley groaned as he pulled a thorn out of the palm of his hand. "Yeah," he said. He was all right. He was more worried about the jars of water. Zero climbed down after him, retrieving the sack along the way. Stanley pulled some more thorns out of his pant legs. The jars hadn't broken. The onions had protected them, like styrofoam packing material. "Glad you didn't do that when you were carrying me," Zero said. They'd lost about a third of the onions, but recovered many of them as they continued down the mountain. When they reached the bottom, the sun was just rising above the lake, and they walked directly toward it. Soon they stood on the edge of a cliff, looking down on the dry lake bed. Stanley wasn't sure, but he thought he could see the remains of the Mary Lou boat off in the distance. "You thirsty?" Stanley asked. "No," said Zero. "How about you?" "No," Stanley lied. He didn't want to be the first one to take a drink. Although they didn't mention it, it had become a kind of challenge between him and Zero. They climbed down into the frying pan. It was a different spot from where they had climbed up. They eased themselves down from one ledge to another and let themselves slide in other places, being especially careful with the sack. Stanley could no longer see the Mary Lou, but headed in what he thought was the right direction. As the sun rose higher, so did the familiar haze of heat and dirt. "You thirsty?" Zero asked. "Nah," said Stanley. "Because you have 3 full jars of water," said Zero. "I thought maybe it was getting too heavy for you, but if you drink some, it'll lighten your load." "Nah, I'm not thirsty," said Stanley. "But if you want a drink, I'll give you some." "No, I'm not thirsty," said Zero. "I was just worried about you." Stanley smiled. "I'm like a camel," he said. They walked for what seemed like a very long time and still never came across the Mary Lou. Stanley was pretty sure that they were heading in the right direction. He remembered that when they left the boat, they were headed toward the setting sun, and now they were headed toward the rising sun. He knew the sun didn't rise and set in exactly the east and west, more like southeast and southwest, but he wasn't sure how that made